If you thought DC might be turning a corner, Tom King is here to tell you that it is not. The former CIA agent turned DC Comics writer has just admitted his upcoming Wonder Woman book is based on fake news about President Donald Trump. He's basically just telling people, stay away from this book. I'm about to give you a political screed. So he recently spoke with CBR about the upcoming Wonder Woman series, and he was asked about the idea to have the United States government passed this Amazon Safety Act that bars Amazons from U.S. soil. That idea was revealed in the comic's official description, which says, after a mysterious Amazonian is accused of mass murder, Congress passes the Amazon Safety Act, barring all Amazons from U.S. soil. To carry out their plans, the government starts a task force. The Amazon extradition entity acts to remove those who don't comply by any means necessary. Now in her search for the truth behind the killing, Wonder Woman finds herself an outlaw in the world she once swore to protect. After explaining why he believes Wonder Woman being a rebel differentiates her from Superman and Batman, and that he's attempting to have the book appeal to his own teenagers because Wonder Woman is somehow against the status quo, he revealed the inspiration for the Amazon Safety Act was Donald Trump's signing of Executive Order 13769, titled Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorist Entry into the United States. This is what he said. He said, I don't want this to be my Twitter feed. It has to be bigger than life. It has to be a cooler metaphor and not an actuality. I wanted her to rebel against the government and be like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's Hulk, someone throwing tanks around. The way that I made that relevant was this idea that the U.S. has turned on the Amazons in a way that resembles the McCarthy era or the Muslim ban we had at the beginning of the Trump administration. All of that power and force comes to her, and she's the one who says, no more, no, thank you. So literally in the paragraph right before he says, I don't want this to be my Twitter feed. And then he's like, yeah, it's actually inspired by the Muslim ban on the Trump administration. And the fact that he's using the term Muslim ban exposes that it's going to be extremely political and based off his Twitter feed because the Muslim ban moniker was a narrative created by opponents of Donald Trump in an attempt to weaponize identity politics against him. The executive order did not name any countries and certainly did not name the Muslim religion or Islam. Instead, it stated suspension of issuance of visas and other immigration benefits to nationals of countries of particular concern. Those countries of particular concern at the time had been determined by the Department of Homeland Security as Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. Upon further review, following the signing of the executive order, North Korea, Venezuela, and Chad were also added to the list. Iraq was removed. Even factcheck.org admitted in January 2017, the Pew Research Center estimated that Trump's original executive order would affect only about 12% of Muslims in the world. Thus, the idea that it was a Muslim ban was utterly ridiculous. So, not only did King reveal he was inspired by fake news surrounding President Donald Trump, he further explained how Wonder Woman turning to violence means she's losing. So not only are we going to get an absolute political lecture from Tom King in this upcoming Wonder Woman series, the guy doesn't really understand Wonder Woman whatsoever. He doesn't seem to understand superheroes really all that much. He comes up with this bizarre idea that you can't actually commit violence and doing it for good. It's just absolutely wild that a guy who supposedly worked for the CIA and was in Iraq doesn't have that kind of understanding. But he previously touched on this subject within an interview with Comic Book Nation, where he explained that he sees Wonder Woman as a contradiction, which doesn't make any sense. But he says, as for like who she is as a character, I mean, she's a contradiction. That's the hard about it. The hard part about writing her is that she's almost radical in sort of her belief in love, compassion, and peace, much more so than sort of Superman and Batman. But she's also, a warrior born. She's someone who comes from a society involved in sort of an endless conflict who trains you to fight. She comes from sort of that Game of Thrones atmosphere. And those two contradictions live inside of her. She's someone who wants peace but makes war, and her having to deal with that makes her one of the more interesting characters in fiction. The idea that you want peace but you have to make war to get it is not a contradiction. That absolutely makes sense. There's no contradiction there whatsoever. And by the end of this video, I will explain it to you, but I don't really even think I need to explain it to you. I think it's very obvious for anyone who reads superhero comics that superheroes do indeed commit violence to stop bad guys, right? To save innocents. I mean, it's very simple. But let's get on here to how he elaborated on this idea with CBR. He said, I think the contradiction at the heart of Wonder Woman that makes her interesting and not just someone up on a pedestal is that she's a warrior for peace. She's super empathetic, but a warrior for peace. That means every time she throws a punch, every time she's fighting, she's losing. Every time she turns to violence, she's failing, and her life is violence. What are you even talking about here? How is stopping bad guys from doing bad things and doing it violently somehow losing? It absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, this guy has a fundamental lack of understanding of superheroes. He's telling you it's going to be an absolute disaster of a story because he just doesn't understand the fundamental principle of a superhero, protecting innocence with violence. What does that mean for her over the long term? That's part of what makes her a warrior. Her war is failure. That makes her interesting, compelling, and a cooler character. She's not someone on a pedestal, but someone who is down here on Earth making decisions and compromises that affect all of our lives, putting that good above herself. So her war is a failure. Are you saying the criminals are going to be winning constantly? It doesn't matter how many people she puts behind bars. Are constantly going to be more and more coming up. I mean, that's just absolutely fantasyland fiction. We know that that doesn't happen. We see that that doesn't happen. When you actually crack down on crime, you can put an end to it. Maybe in Joe Biden land that Tom King wants to live in, that does indeed happen, but that's because there's no one cracking down on the crime. But anyways, let's get into this. So the National Conference of Catholic Bishops explained this fundamental reality that you can indeed be violent in order to achieve peace or wage war to achieve peace. They have this whole this whole document called The Challenge of Peace, God's Promise and Our Response, and explain that St. Augustine viewed war, in some cases at least, to restrain evil and protect the innocent. The classic case which illustrated his view was the use of lethal force to prevent aggression against innocent victims. Faced with the fact of attack on the innocent, the presumption that we do no harm even to our enemy, yielded to the command of love, understood as the need to restrain an enemy who would injure the innocent. The document goes on to explain that recourse to war is permissible, quote, only to confront a real and certain danger, i.e. to protect innocent life, to preserve conditions necessary for decent human existence, and to basic human rights. As both Pope Pius XII and Pope John XXIII made clear, if war of retribution was ever justifiable, the risks of modern war negate such a claim today. Thus, Diana's belief in love, compassion, and peace actually coincides with her being a warrior and waging war on those who put the lives of innocents at risk. Again, this is what superheroes do. Superheroes wage violence against bad criminals to stop them from harming innocents. I mean, this is what they do. That is like the fundamental aspect of a superhero story. And the idea that he's claiming that it's a contradiction is absolutely bizarre. I think is just another reason why you shouldn't be buying this book. I have absolutely no intentions of buying this book. I do hope that Ethan Van Sciver does indeed buy this book, though. He started up a new video series where he's reviewing absolute garbage comics, and maybe he will buy Wonder Woman #1 and review this one from Tom King, because everything we're hearing from Tom King seems to imply that it is indeed going to live up to maybe what EVS's standards are for a garbage comic to be able to get on his in his video series. But let me know what you think. What do you make of Tom King's comments about Wonder Woman here, and the fact that he's being inspired by legitimate fake news about Donald Trump?
Subscribe for more.